Welcome back to RGR, folks. I'm lucky enough that we were able, thanks to COVID and everything else, that Dan's in front of his computer, I'm in front of mine, and we have draft prospects to look at and talk about. I can't talk. We're recording this live. By the time you guys see it, it will be just on replay, so you don't have to hit the chat or anything. But leave your comments below. If you're new to the channel, hit the sub button. Leave us your thoughts and a thumbs up if you happen to like this one. Also, you can hit the bell notification to find out when we do something else. I want to get started, Dan. You've done a ton of work over at Arrowhead, guys, looking at film, checking out some of these prospects. And let's start on the defensive side. And there's a lot of speculation about what the Chiefs are going to do, unless there's somebody that really stands out on their board. And I'm having trouble coming up with more than like 18, 20 first-round grades, to tell you the truth. So I think it's going to be a defensive player because there's just not that many guys at the positions that they can use. They can't go wide receiver, folks. They're not taking Mims with 32. They have nowhere to play him. So who have you seen? Where do you want to start?
Oh, so, I would still even, if he felt that far, I'd probably think about it a little bit because you figure Robinson and Watkins are only on one-year deals and you need another outside guy. So, but, realistically speaking, we're not going to take a wide receiver at 32. And if we did, my brain might just explode. But obviously the area that sticks out the most is corner. They only have 2 or 3 or 4 now because of the Hamilton signing on the roster. No one at starting capacity outside of Ward. And they're going to need someone really to, if they don't re-sign Bashaud Breeland in the next, however many weeks and months until the season maybe starts. Yeah. They'll definitely need somebody out there. And there's the way that this draft looks to me right now is there's probably going to be a cornerback run somewhere near the end of the first round. There's a lot of elite offensive talent at the top. Offensive tackle is pretty good at the top. Obviously, wide receiver, quarterback is always going to be a position people reach for, and that's going to leave the teams that are already pretty good wanting to get some of those corners that are deep right there. And I think we could see some of them end up falling for teams that want to come up and maybe get a quarterback. It'll be like Jalen Hurts or a Jake Fromm, maybe, if someone feels like maybe the Patriots want to go get one of those guys. So I looked at I couldn't even count how many corners at this point that I've looked at, but there's a couple that really kind of stick out to me. I think that Noah Igbinoghene is somebody that, he's raw, and that's one of the things I think could drop him down the first round list. And even though he is raw, he's a very physical style corner. He plays that press man that we want to see in the Spags system. And I mean, even though he's not the 100% the potential he could be at with, ball skills and getting his head around to look for the ball, he's got such a feel for the way a receiver runs their routes. He's an ex-receiver. He played and he committed to Auburn as a wide receiver and made the transition to defensive back. And he runs routes with them, and he's really a kind of a sticky corner and someone that is physical enough to really break up balls at the catch point and that kind of thing. That's what he's done so far right now. And when he starts to get his head around a little bit more, we'll see those become interceptions. And that's something that, we've all kind of hoped for going into that cornerback room. And some of those guys with those high upside, and there's always, like Jeff Gladney is also someone that could fall into this draft. And I've seen a lot of AJ Terrell. I actually have a video up on RGR Football coming soon.
Yep. And if you missed his last one on Gladney, folks, that review's out there as well.
I also have a review of Gladney at Arrowhead, guys. So we've got a bunch of this stuff going up on these guys. And Terrell's another guy I've seen mocked at 32. I think it's a bit of a reach personally. Mm-hmm. I think he's more of around the 40-ish area. But yeah, I think Noah Igbinoghene is someone that if he fell to the Chiefs at 32, I don't think there's any way they pass up on him just because of his raw abilities.
See, I agree with you there on the raw, and I was put my notes that he actually runs the route for the receiver because he's got an idea where that wiggle's going to come, right?
Yep.
But in my book, he's also down there in that 40 to 50 range. Like, I don't see him falling. I see very few, actually, after Henderson that belong in the first round if I'm just looking at grades.
No, I completely agree with you. But, teams will definitely reach on corners.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially teams like the Chiefs who won't pick again until 63 if they decide to go ahead and not trade back, then I think they could end up reaching for someone with that high end potential.
Yeah, and I like him there too. It's perfectly fine with me. If you're stuck and you can't get any value to trade back,
Yeah.
and this is just a weird year, I can see that possibly happening. It makes it difficult. I could see him. You talked about Terrell and Gladney. I think they're both a little bit farther down too, but they're in that conversation. One guy that I don't think gets any love anymore, and if you flip on his 2018 and you don't look at 2019, you have all kinds of things to look at, right? But Christian Fulton didn't play that well in 2019. He was injured quite a bit. And I see him, honestly, as the big value in the late first because of that 2019. I'm not sold that he can't rebound and become a better pro than he was a college guy, but what do you think of him?
Yeah, I watched him and CJ Henderson like exclusively were like the first two corners that I really looked into. Obviously, I skipped Okudah. He's going probably top 5, so there's really no point in scouting him that much. But Fulton he was a little confusing to me. I looked a lot at his 2019 tape. He's got a lot of really good attributes. He is also an extremely sticky corner. He does not play the ball as much as you would like in a cornerback, and he's another one of those guys has to work on getting his head around. But no, he's definitely got. I think he's probably when we're talking about CJ Henderson and Fulton, at his floor right now is better than Henderson's, but I think Henderson has a better ceiling just based on his frame and that kind of thing. But he's probably the better corner prospect of the two coming out, and I agree that he isn't getting enough love because, like you said, his 2018 tape is exceptional, and obviously a lot of people fell in love with Stingley, who is their freshman and who's, oh my gosh, an incredible cornerback prospect. And
2 years, folks, you can't have him for 2 years. Relax.
I mean, people flip on the LSU tape and they're busy watching Stingley and some other of these guys, and then they kind of leave out Fulton, who's really an exceptionally high floor corner, and I think he's the closest outside of Okudah to a finished product at this point. And it would be I don't personally see him falling that far, but if crazier things have happened. Last year, Greedy Williams, who everyone was high on before the draft, he fell into the second round. So we're looking at corners that typically wouldn't fall to the Chiefs at 32. But if he starts trickling down to the 20s, 25, and then he's just kind of sitting there and some other runs get made, you never know. You could really get some good value with Fulton at 32.
There's a couple other guys out there. I've talked a lot about Diggs. People are either yay or nay on him. And he's another guy that I think is probably going to be in that 25 to 45 range.
But sounds about right.
But I think we both agree they got to look at that position with a whole lot of a magnifying glass to find somebody, depending on which scenario falls down. But say they're all gone. Say you don't want to reach on Terrell. You feel that he needs to be a 40, and they're just not going to do it. Where do you go from there?
Well, in this scenario, I assume that Patrick Queen and Kenneth Murray are both off the board. I really feel like both of those linebackers will be gone. I would love to see the Chiefs get one of them, maybe even a Zach Bond at 32, but we'll just go ahead and go away from the defense. We're looking at a guy I think that could really help anchor this offensive line in Cesar Ruiz. He's 20 years old, and I've seen him kind of fall. He's kind of doing this right now with the draft board, in my opinion. I see a lot of people think that he's a first round talent, or I see some people where he's dropped into the mid-second round. But he's 20 years old. He's already he already played his junior year at Michigan, and the guy is one of the most athletic centers in this. He's probably the best polished center / interior offensive lineman in the entire draft class, and he's 20 years old. That's just so impressive. And if they could find a way to nab him at 32, I think that drastically improves the quality of the interior offensive line play.
And everything they've done to this point in bringing back the wide receiver core, adding a little bit of more, I feel that the bell for Seals trade here is really about getting down the field and having another weapon rather than another blocker. But everything is leading towards the Chiefs being able to just roll back into their offense, pick up where they started last year. That makes a lot of sense to me, except for the fact that those guys are hard to find. He's really the only interior offensive lineman that deserves to be anywhere close to 32.
I 100% agree. And if like I said, I think that people are going to reach for Cesar Ruiz, especially if the board falls with a lot of defensive players going after 15. Because we're going to, like I said, we're going to see a lot of offensive guys, offensive tackles, wide receivers go in that top 15 range, and then we're going to start to see defensive players get picked off. That's where they're going to find that value, and then I think around 25 is where we'll see some teams start to take a chance, maybe on a Cesar Ruiz. But man, if he's on the board at 32, it's going to be a difficult decision depending on the value. Maybe they get an offer and they feel comfortable with Ryder and Allegretti and Wiley and all that kind of that interior offensive group that they have, and if they feel comfortable enough to trade back and kind of say, well, we don't really need the most talented interior offensive lineman in the draft, I would feel a little skeptical about that, but you never know what a GM is going to do in the draft.
Yeah, and especially this particular group, Andy Heck and Andy Reid seem to be pretty comfortable with guys that the fan base and we as exterior analysts don't really dig, but they're comfortable with him. They want athleticism, and that's the one thing about Ruiz I'm not 100% sold on. He's not as good an athlete as, say, Mitch Morse was, or some of the guys that they're in the mold, but he's the best of what they have available at this point, so it's a trade-off. My question, I keep coming back to, if they're going to go offense in the first round, this tackle class is pretty good up top. So I keep thinking either they might have a chance at 32 at one. The kid Thomas from Georgia sticks out to me. There's a couple there, but if not, it might be enough tackle pressure to get people to come up above them to push those corners down. So I'm good either way.
No, this draft is so weird because no one's going to be able to evaluate their guys the way they want to do it, and some teams are going to be really high on players, and regardless of their physical evals that they don't get to do on this downtime, and they're going to want to move up for those guys. And I think we're going to see a lot of trades and just some all-out craziness. You never know. I would love to see the Chiefs trade out of the first round, pick up some more second and third round picks. I think that's where the value in this draft really is.
Yeah, my whole thing is as many picks as you can squeeze in the top 100, I'm happy.
Yep.
But you mentioned something at the top that we haven't gotten to, and one guy that could fall, it could be in that scenario that comes down out of the 30s into the 40s that kind of piques my interest, again, because of what his film has been in the past. But I look at Grant Delpit and I see Tyron Part 2, and to have a pair of them with one over the top really is something that I kind of dig. Is he the first guy that stands out to you at the safety spot?
I like Grant Delpit. I do. And I know that some people are going to say that, you look at coverage guys and say, who cares about their tackling? But the man cannot tackle. And I watched a couple games of his, and watching somebody just get out of the way of trying to tackle somebody really kind of turns me off a little bit. And granted, I think he's an absolutely great athlete, and it would be something else to see him get coached up by this defensive staff and Terrell Matthew. So I think that there's something to say about being able to mold that kind of player. But for me, Xavier McKinney is probably somebody that I would love to see in this draft class just fall to 32. I think he's probably, in my opinion, the most polished of the safeties coming out. I think he's got the best ready-to-go skill set. So that's where I would go in the safety department. But if you can hone the tackling ability and want to play more physical out of Grant Delpit, he's clearly got the best ceiling in this draft class.
Yeah, and I keep coming back. You're absolutely right. And I think, in my opinion, I think most of what we saw in 2019 of him whiffing and not getting involved is a business decision from what I've heard him say to others. Obviously, I've never spoken to him, folks, but that's just my take. But I read into what you're saying, because having Tyron Matthew, a guy that's worn 7 at that school before, I think that's a big deal when you come into the NFL. And I'd be a little bit more willing to take a swing on him, say at 42 rather than 32. So I'm with you there. Of all the other prospects that you've looked at, and I know you're so far ahead of me on film right now, it's sick. Folks, I'm still working on the draft guide, and that is all the production and the athleticism. It's getting there. I promise it's getting there. But give me one guy that sticks out to you. I don't care if he's a 5th-round guy that you just think is a good fit. Who haven't I thought about yet that you've watched?
So I've actually gotten a few ahead of some of the videos that I'm going to do for you, and Willie Gay Jr. is someone that just absolutely flashes all of the things that you want a productive middle linebacker in the NFL to do. He's just not consistent. And when you see a player like that, obviously he's got some off-field issues, some suspensions at Mississippi State, and that will obviously limit your growth in college and prevent you from becoming, a first round draft pick, which I think he could have been had he been on the field for all of his career. But he comes out and he's one of the most athletically gifted linebackers in this class, and he can absolutely hit people. He is just all over the field, just wanting to lay the lumber. And that's one of the things that sticks out for me as a linebacker. And I know it's not what everyone is looking for necessarily nowadays. You want to be able to cover and be one-on-one with a running back and a tight end. But as someone who's as fast as he is, who ran out, just above a 4.4, he's got leaping ability. He's just such a great athlete, and he's pretty sticky. He's not great in coverage yet. He still needs to learn a little bit of the nuances of that kind of thing. Dropping into a zone is something that his footwork just isn't there with, but he's got the speed, sideline speed. And when he sees a play coming, he absolutely flies into the hole. And I love that about him. And I really think that he could be somebody that maybe doesn't start as a middle linebacker in the NFL, but works his way from a will position, something that the Chiefs are kind of looking for in this draft class. They don't have that, at least we don't think they have that set will yet. And you want to see someone with the speed and then being able to cover like he can. He has that ability too. So when I want someone like a Willie Gay, it's important that we see the work ethic. Obviously, when you can see that kind of development on the field and the flashes that he has, you just got to work to hone it. And I think that Matt House and this defensive staff could get the best out of him.
I like that you bring him up, and I agree with you. I think it puts him at a disadvantage in this draft, not being able to interact with people.
Exactly.
And even if it is FaceTime or like we're doing right now, it's still tough. 826 snaps in college. That ain't much, folks. That's less than half of Isaiah Simmons. But I will give you a little short preview of the athletic matrix. He's right up there with Isaiah Simmons when you measure all of the athleticism together. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought him up. Here's my last question for you, because I've thought about him as well. I haven't done the film as much as you have. I really only looked at, I think, 6 quarters at this point. But I can see everything that you're talking about. The off-field stuff is way concerning for me, given the balance in this locker room currently. I could see going for him if he falls to the bottom of the 3rd, but I'm not doing it before then.
Oh, no, not even a little bit. I think that's where, if you take him, that's where you take him. And if you have a little more concern about him, you maybe wait till the 4th. And if you pick up an extra 4th along the way, maybe he falls into that spot behind your 3rd and in front of your other 4th. And that would be the ideal spot for somebody with, some history-related questions.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay, I think we're on the same page there. I feel like at least we got back in touch, and we have a basis to go off. We're going to be back again, folks. We have some more Just Film reviews coming from Dan here in the next week or two. We also have we're going to have to do more of this because it's coming down to the wire of this draft actually going off. So thanks for all of your time. We can find you at Arrowhead, guys, right? Everything's posted over there, right?
Everything's there, yeah. All my reviews that I've done are at Arrowhead, guys, and you can see a bunch of video or clip breakdowns on my Twitter at D_Harms19.
Sweet.
That's my Twitter handle.
I was actually going to do that right this time. I was so close. Folks, we'll get him back, but check out that in the meantime. And AJ Terrell's next up on our review, right?
Yep, that's the next one to go.
So that's it for today, folks. If you like this or you want to get in touch with Dan, hit him on Twitter. Make sure that you click the sub button here, hit that bell notification, leave your comment below so we know what you think, and leave that thumbs up if you like this. We appreciate you checking this one out, and we'll catch you next time.